Welcome back to Weems Motor Co. It's time to wrap up some fabrication on Adelaide's bike. Stick around. Alright, so here's my idea. Take this battery, take some old 90-degree mild steel covered in mill scale, and make a tray that would fit this nice little battery. And I think the best thing to do would be to save as much as possible we can with welding. We've been doing a lot of things on this bike to save money, to save time, fabricating things in-house rather than purchasing something offline. So I thought, what better opportunity than to show you guys some of the fabrication process, the way I think through things, and some little hints and tricks along the way. So we're going to take this piece of 1x1 by 1/8 inch thick mild steel. You can purchase this from any home goods store, Lowe's, Home Depot, what have you. And we're going to use the battery as our actual template. So we're going to measure the distance to keep from having to weld so much. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use this old piece of mild steel and make a battery tray. Let's do it. Alright, so the idea here is to not cut 4 pieces and weld them together so that they fit around this, but rather cut notches so that we can fold and bend this around the battery, and that'll save a little bit on welding, and it'll actually make it a little bit more structurally strong. So the first thing we want to do is, knowing that we're going to have 4 angles around this battery, we're going to have to cut 45-degree angles, and I simply find the very end of this and I mark my 45 right there. That tells me what my first angle is going to be. Now, I'm going to use my battery as the template. We're going to line that right up at the end. I'm going to leave myself just a little bit of space, a little bit of wiggle room. We don't want too much because we want the battery to fit tight, but we don't want to make it so small. And then I simply put a line up at the opposite end of where that battery is going to fall out. Now, once we have our mark there, kind of hard to see with the angle. Once we have our mark there, then I can make a 90-degree cut off of that point, because that's going to be our first bend point. Alright, now that we got that first length measured out, then we just simply rotate the battery around, knowing that that's going to be our next angle, and produce another line. Same process as before. Make sure we put a 45-degree angle on each side. And then simply rotate the battery once more. Once again with our 45s. And then the last side of the battery. Now, because we know this is going to be our last side, we only have to do the 145 to the inside. Alright, now that we got our 4 angles and ends all measured out, next thing we need to do is take our cutoff wheel and cut this thing up. Now, it's really important, just cut the notches. Don't cut all the way up. Then you're going to have 4 additional pieces, which causes you to weld 4 additional parts. The idea is to cut these notches out, then we're going to fold this thing together so that we don't have to weld so much on it. So let's get this thing chopped up. Alright, now that we got 4 of our angles cut there, including the ends, we're going to fold this thing up and make a battery tray. Let's fold it up. Alright, now that we got that all bent up and we ensured that our battery does in fact fit inside there, the next thing to do, really importantly, is you don't want to weld over this gray stuff that's on the outside of this mild steel. This is called mill scale, and it's basically the process that they put on this metal to keep it from rusting. There's a few different techniques, and you're going to find all kinds of stuff online about how to remove mill scale, but you don't want to weld over this because it's going to not penetrate very well when you go to weld. So this is a trick that you're going to learn from me. Go to your grocery store and buy some white distilled vinegar. Fill it in a pot or plastic, whatever, container. Drop your metal in there and walk away. Give it about 4 hours, and all of this mill scale will be gone so that you'll have a nice, fresh metal surface to weld to. So let's knock that out real quick. Alright, so while that's soaking in the distilled vinegar, we got a few hours for that. I'm going to go ahead and take the tank off of there, and we're going to figure out a way to mount these coils up underneath there, and also the Payson electronic ignition module. We want to hide all this stuff up as much as possible underneath the tank. We also have the regulator. You know, this is what converts the power from your alternator to be able to charge the battery. We're going to mount that underneath the battery on that battery tray. So let's get this tank off, get that stuff mounted up underneath there, and so we can keep rolling while that's soaking. Alright, now that we got that knocked out, you also probably notice I put a little toggle switch there to control lights. But I think it's been a little over 4 hours, and it's time to see about that mill scale coming off of that battery tray. All you need for this is just simply a pair of rubber gloves and a wire brush. The vinegar is not very acidic, so it's not going to burn you or anything, but mostly this is because that rust will actually stain your fingers a little bit. So keep from that happening, just throw on some rubber gloves. Let's get that mill scale off. Alright, now that we got that all cleaned up from that mill scale, did a little bit of squaring, make sure that it was square, threw a C-clamp on there because we're going to have to get ready to tack that. But before I tack it, I want to make sure that that battery still fits inside of that tray because I did tweak it around, make sure it was square. So simply take your battery, do a test fit, oh, like butter. Alright, we're just going to throw a little tack weld into that one open joint, and then we will continue on. Alright, now that we got that tacked together, we're going to do just one more little test fit to make sure that it didn't warp or go out of shape. And voila, fits like a glove. Now what we're going to do is we're going to measure the inside dimensions of that and cut out a piece of sheet metal so that we can lay it in the bottom there. And then we'll drill some holes and then we'll tack weld that in. let's cut some metal. Alright, now that we got that tack welded all together, nice and pretty, we're going to have to mount the regulator onto the bottom of this. So my idea is to take some 3/4 inch by 1/8 inch strap steel and cut a piece that'll lay across the bottom that we can bolt this to. And it'll also work as the tie down for the top of the battery, which we'll get to next. So let's cut this little piece of steel, get it tack welded on here, drill some holes so that we can get that regulator mounted right there on the bottom of the tray. Alright, now that I got the regulator mounted to the bottom of the battery box, I got this nice little foam that has an adhesive back that I'm going to be putting in the bottom of the tray to give that cushion for the push-in for the battery. And basically the battery goes right on top of that. And the last thing we have to kind of figure out what to do is how to make a strap to hold the battery down in to the tray. That's why I left this little tab sticking out. I'm gonna make a bracket that comes up and it's gonna be hinged across and down that will actually pinch and close and hold that down pressure on the battery, holding it nice and stable inside the box. Last thing to do is we're gonna weld a couple tabs onto the bottom thanks to our friends over at Lowbrow Customs. They sell these nice little fabrication tabs. We're gonna weld these onto the frame so that we can put some bolts up and hold that battery tray in place so they can be removed in case you need to do maintenance or modifications to the bike. It's never good to weld things solidly onto the frame unless it are bungs or tabs or stuff like that. So that being said, we need to make this top strap to hold down the battery. Let's knock it out. Alright, now that we got that nice little hinge welded into place, I need to figure out my top strap that comes across and comes down and bends. I'm just going to take some simple 3/4 inch by 14 gauge strap steel, measure across, measure down, measure out for that little bolt to go through there to hold it down. Let's bend this thing up, get it on here and weld it up to that other side of the hinge. Alright, so we got the battery tray in place. I used those two little tabs from Lowbrow. Got it indicated where we want to mount it. And now left is just to tack it into place, and then we can remove everything and finish weld it up. Let's knock it out. And just like that, there you have it. A do-it-yourself battery tray for your custom motorcycle. Probably costs maybe $40 worth of little pieces and stuff like that. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up the video today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you are not part of our Patreon, make sure that you jump over there and check that out. But if you are new around here, make sure you jump down and hit that subscribe button. If you really like the video, hit that thumbs up, turn those notifications on, and let everyone know what's going on right here at Weems Motor Co. Peace.